welcome back to my channel. If you've never been here before, my name is Courtney, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about my PCOS and infertility story. This is a very personal video to make, and I haven't really talked much about this to people outside of my immediate family, and so it's going to be a little nerve-wracking for me, so sorry if my voice gets a little low sometimes. It's probably going to be a little emotional as well, but let's see if we can get through it. I really want to make sure that I get this shared with you so that if any of you are going through the same thing, you can know that somebody else is here that has gone through the same thing as you are and you are not alone. And hopefully this gives me a little bit of a therapeutic release to kind of get it out there and say what I need to say about it. First off, I want to explain what PCOS is. The acronym stands for polycystic ovary syndrome or ovarian syndrome. I think in the UK it might be called ovary syndrome. I know here in the US it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. PCOS is a hormonal disorder that is linked to insulin resistance. So there are a few main symptoms of PCOS, and you have to have at least two of these symptoms to be diagnosed with the syndrome. The first and the main symptom is irregular or missing periods. The second symptom is excessive androgen levels or androgen hormones, which is excessive male hormones for women. And the third main symptom is polycystic ovaries. There are different ways to diagnose this particular issue, but you have to have at least two of those three main symptoms to be diagnosed with it. I have and have always had all three of these main symptoms. I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome when I was 17, and there wasn't much information about it, and doctors didn't know a whole lot about it. So it was really hard for me because there were no real answers. My doctor just automatically put me on birth control to regulate my periods, and that's all we really did for it. Some of the other symptoms that you have as the syndrome kind of progresses in you can be anything from excessive weight gain, fatigue, unwanted hair growth. You can have mood swings. There are hormonal issues that cause those mood swings. Those hormonal issues can also cause acne, adult acne, acne you can't control with face wash or anything like that. And it can also cause majorly heavy bleeding and extreme pain when you do have a period. So currently there is no cure for PCOS. There are ways to treat the symptoms, but as far as I know and as far as my research has gone, there's no cure as of yet. So that's kind of hard to deal with, knowing that you have this syndrome that you can never get rid of, that affects your body in such significant ways. Not having a period but maybe once or twice a year may be a godsend to some women, but those with PCOS pray to have periods every month. When we do have them, like when I have mine, it's very rare, but I am literally stuck in bed in pain or stuck in my house because it's so heavy I can't keep up with it. It's not pleasant by any stretch of the imagination, so knowing there's no cure for that, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow. Being diagnosed at 17 was really hard because they didn't know too much about it. Like I said before, I did go on birth control. I went on it for a little while and it was helping regulate my periods, but it didn't help with any of the other symptoms. It did help for a short period of time, but then once I guess my body got used to it, it stopped working altogether and my periods went back to being irregular, even though I was taking it the way I was supposed to be. So off and on for several years, I did try that. They took me off of it to see if my body would re-regulate. It never did. Then they put me on a different one. It would regulate for a little while and then it would stop. So I have tried many different types of the pill to help regulate my period. None of them really helped for very long, so I stopped doing that. Because of my PCOS and the different symptoms that I did encounter, the heavy and painful periods, the mood swings, just all of those items on top of not feeling very womanly because you're not having your period, or you have hair where you don't want it, or any of those types of items, you kind of get very depressed. And that's another symptom of the syndrome as well. Because your hormone levels are so out of whack, you can easily fall into depression. And I have had bouts of depression that a lot of people don't know about. Obviously, my husband Chris knows about it, and we have talked to a few family members just here and there about it. But when we were in Texas, when I lived in Texas, we were there. I didn't have any family there. It was just me and Chris most of the time, especially at the end when his brother and sister-in-law moved. I felt very alone. So being depressed, having to deal with all of this ups and downs on top of having to deal with all of the normal symptoms of PCOS and just life without family, I fell into a lot of depression bouts that, thank God, my husband was able to pull me out of. It's no joke. This syndrome can really affect you in lots of different ways, and I don't think people realize that. And I don't think that a lot of people even know that this syndrome exists. So on top of having to deal with all these symptoms and all this aggravation that comes with this darn syndrome, you have to try and explain to people why you can't go to work because you're in so much pain or you're bleeding so heavily. To male managers or male people of authority in where you work, you have to explain these things to them. You can't just say, oh, I can't come in. Like, it's hard to deal with that aspect of it as well. And then having people think that basically you're a flake because you can't do these things like you want to. You have depression, so you don't want to get out of bed, or you have painful or very heavy periods, so you can't get out of bed some days. It's very hard and difficult, and it was very hard for a long period of time for me. And I don't think I would have gotten through it without my loving husband, Christopher, who was always very helpful and very positive about trying to help me out of feeling like there was no hope, because it felt like there wasn't at some point. But I'm really glad that I had him to kind of talk me out of it. I've learned to deal with those things a little bit differently now. I don't get as depressed. I do have some issues with anxiety now because of it. Because of the hormone level fluctuation that I have been getting help for. And I just want other people who have this syndrome to know that you are not alone. You are not the only ones that have gone through this. You may be going through it differently. Different symptoms may be more difficult for you, or you may have different symptoms than I do. But just know that there are people out there that are going through the same thing, and they can go through it and get through it. So can you. I think if anything comes from me doing this video about this, that's one thing that I really hope, is that it touches someone out there that does have this syndrome and does feel hopeless or does feel depressed, and they need someone to kind of help them through it. If any of you out there are that person, please, if you don't want to leave a comment in the comment section, just email me. My email is in the description. I would be extremely glad to touch base with you so we could just talk. Sometimes that helps. So with all that being said about PCOS, one of the main symptoms and one of the hardest struggles for me is the infertility. PCOS is the leading cause of infertility in women today. There are so many women who struggle with infertility because of PCOS, and I am one of them. My husband and I have been married for 6 years, a little over 6 years. It was 6 years in November, and we knew right off from the first, months that we were married that we wanted to start trying right away. This doesn't seem very normal for most married couples. Most married couples want to live a year, bask in the joy of being a couple, but we knew that it was going to be a struggle for us, so we felt like we had to start right away. So a few months in, I think maybe it was the January after we got married, I contacted my OBGYN at the time, who whose office was like 2.5 hours away because of the insurance we had. We had to see certain doctors, and that doctor ended up being like 2.5 hours away. So anytime I needed to see him for anything, I had to drive 2.5 hours there, sit, do the appointment, drive 2.5 hours back. It was a pain. But we did get some kind of idea about what the syndrome actually was at that point. So my OBGYN at the time said to me, you just have to lose the weight and it'll all be better. Okay, well, you know, this is a doctor. I'm going to go ahead and understand what he's saying, take it in and go, okay, this is somebody who has a medical degree. He should know what he's talking about. So I'm just going to do what he tells me. I was put on a no more than 900 calorie diet, which at the time seemed kind of extreme. And now, knowing what I know about keto and what my body really needs, I can't believe I did that. I was on it for months. And the sad thing is that I was doing that while taking metformin for the first time. And anybody who's ever taken metformin can tell you it messes with your stomach so bad. So I was doing that on top of taking metformin for the first time, and on top of taking Clomid, which anybody in the fertility kind of realm of things knows that Clomid is a medication that stimulates ovulation in women who are not ovulating on their own. And anybody who's ever taken it can probably also tell you that it will mess with your system very badly. So I was doing that diet on top of these other things, and it kind of was all very extreme, but I was willing to do whatever it took to get us a baby. So being on the 900 calorie diet, I was very strict. Chris can attest to this. I was miserable. I was to drink these little 100 calorie shakes. I was allowed 9 of them in a day, and that was my diet. That's all I could eat. No solid foods, nothing other than water and those shakes. And it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was very, very difficult. But I did it for months, and I gained weight. Gained weight. I don't know how my body gained weight on a 900 calorie diet. I don't know how it did it, but it did. And I'm not talking stayed where it was. I'm talking I gained weight. Not very much, granted. But when you're on a 900 calorie diet, you don't want to be gaining weight. You want to be losing weight. I think I gained probably over a 3-month period 15 pounds, which was not okay to me. So now I want to talk a little bit about the actual fertility treatments that we were taking. Or I say we, but it was really me. So in order to start doing the Clomid cycles, my body had to start a period, which I could never do on my own, definitely not on demand. So they had to give me Provera to start those periods, or those cycles. Once I started, I was taking Clomid ranging from day 3 to day 5. The first two cycles I was taking 50 milligrams, and I never ovulated. So the next 3 cycles, we stepped it up to 100 milligrams, changing the day that I started taking them. Never started my own period, always had to take Provera to start the cycle, never ovulated. So at that point, we decided to take a break. It had gotten to be too much. The 900 calorie diet, the metformin, which was making me very ill, like ghost white every day, just sick as a dog. And not to mention the Clomid was messing with my system as well. Mood swings like nobody's business. Hot flashes, like in the dead of winter, January and February. And it gets pretty, it could get pretty cold in Texas. I was having horrible sweating hot flashes. And we had had enough. We were stressed. We were stressed because of money. We were stressed because of doing these treatments and not getting any results. We were stressed because we were emotionally attached to this, obviously, and nothing was coming of it. Month after month, seeing the negative on the pregnancy test was hard. It was hard. So we decided to take a break. We never prevented during the break, but we never got pregnant either, obviously. So for a couple of years, we just kind of went on with our lives, not preventing, but not doing any sort of extra fertility treatments or going to the doctor, but my normal checkup. During this time, I was able to lose a little bit of weight. I think I lost 20 pounds, I think, during those few years, kind of fluctuating. But by the end of it, it had been 20 pounds. Exercising, barely eating because I was so depressed. And that's not a joking matter, but it is what it is. During that 3-year period, I think it was about 6 months after we stopped taking all the medications to begin with, we tried one more time with Clomid, 150 milligram cycles, and I'm pretty sure that we did two or three more cycles at the 150 milligram. That really messed with my body. Chris was like, no, we're done for now. At that point, I had researched it a bit more. I've done a lot of online research. So for a couple of years when we weren't really trying, I was researching a lot of things. And one of the things that came up a lot was this drug called Femera. I believe it was FDA approved for women who had just gone through breast cancer and breast cancer treatments. But I had seen a lot of articles about using it specifically for PCOS patients who do not ovulate and who had also previously tried Clomid without any success. I mentioned this to my doctor and he said no, absolutely not. He would not prescribe it. He didn't know anything about it and he wouldn't be prescribing it. At that point, I said, okay, well, I think that we have, exhausted our abilities with you. And we stopped seeing him. So for the longest time, we weren't doing anything. There were no specialists that were covered under our insurance at the time. There were no specialists within 3 hours of where we lived. So our finances, on top of we were kind of exhausted at that point, kind of put a damper on everything. So we moved back to Florida and we both got amazing jobs with really good insurance that either paid completely for treatments and or diagnoses of fertility issues or partial. But needless to say, the insurance was a ton better. There were specialists in our area, and we started to see a specialist last year, probably about mid-year, to finally figure out what was going on. What besides the fact that I'm not ovulating is the issue. I had every test in the book done, and I am talking every blood work done. He knew I had PCOS. He could see it in me, and he could see my medical records. So he's like, yes, you have PCOS. We want to attack that. So we got a plan to attack that. But we also want to do other testing to see if you have other kind of things going on in your body. They tested my thyroid, my vitamin levels, cholesterol, every hormone in the book, thyroid. I got so much blood taken, I don't know what they did with it all. So this reproductive endocrinologist turned out to be a godsend. He was really going after it all. We got all this testing done this past year. I think the last bit of testing Was a small in-office surgical procedure that I'll talk about in a different video. So Chris and I compiled all of the information that we got from him, and we made a decision that we are going to kind of go for it this year. One of the main issues, and it always will be an issue for me, is my weight. We, like I said before, started the keto diet by recommendation of this doctor actually, and that has been working fantastically. So we decided to go back on it here in January, like I discussed in my previous video, and I've already lost 10 pounds in a week. No diet has ever done this for me before. So that is a piece of my fertility journey, and I will talk more about the keto aspect of that in a different video. I think it deserves its own video because that is such an important part of my mind frame turning around, was the fact that there was something out there that would work. So with all of that information and starting keto and knowing that that's working, Chris and I have decided we are going to start fertility treatments. We have made our first appointment with the reproductive endocrinologist. That first appointment is called your plan of treatment appointment. We are going to get a full plan on dates and what path we're taking and all of that. But I think what we're going to try first is going to be medicated cycles, possibly with injectables. So that's what we've decided to do. And I'm really excited and nervous about that whole journey that's ahead of us. And I hope that you will join us on that journey. So that's kind of it for this video. Please look forward to future videos about this fertility stuff. I know it can be kind of crazy. Trust me, I'm living it. I know it's crazy. But I feel like this is a needed outlet so that I can kind of express all of my thoughts and kind of what's going on, and also document it, because if one day we are blessed enough to have a baby, I want them to know how much they were wanted. I want them to see this journey so that they know that we tried so hard for them. And I think that that's important, especially for couples who go through this. So I want to have it all documented for them and for myself, and hopefully sharing this journey on YouTube will help other women and couples who are going through this same thing. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I know it was kind of long and there was a lot going on in it, but already after filming this video, I'm at the end of it and I have a lighter heart. So I know that I made the right decision. Please comment down below if you are a woman or part of a couple who is experiencing infertility, or let me know if you know of somebody that has PCOS. I am really interested to know how much this syndrome touches other people. I would love for you to subscribe and make sure that you hit the notification bell so you can get notifications on when I upload my other fertility videos as well. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.